Welcome magic seekers and magic makers. April here on Natural Witchcraft, my new channel. So some of you probably know me from over at Tarot and Witchery. If not, you can check that out down below. I thought I would do the tradwitchtag because it's very intriguing, and it's originally from Numqua. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And I really liked what she had to say, and it was really fun to find her channel via this tag. So today I'm going to dive in there and share with you about what I think about each one of these questions, and a lot of them are loaded, and I would love to hear your responses down below as well. So please chime in on these questions and let me know how you feel about what's being asked. Question number 1, what kind of witchcraft do you practice? And it kind of gives a couple ideas: Wicca, traditional witchcraft, folk magic, ceremonial. There are so many different kinds. I guess some people would say green witchcraft. Interestingly enough, traditional witchcraft is listed in there, and that for me is a loaded question. I'm not going to go into that too much, but do we really know what a traditional witch is? Do we really know what traditional witchcraft is? We don't really have that many records of those things, and I think a lot of the traditional witches probably were illiterate and not writing it down. So there's that. I'll put that aside. So I'm not going to classify myself as a traditional witch because I have no idea what that really is. Folk magic, yes, definitely. Not ceremonial magic. I'm not into ceremonial magic. I'm a natural witch. I practice natural witchcraft or natural witchery. And by that, I mean I follow the seasons and cycles. I derive my practice from the world around me, from the plants and animals, by interacting with my inner voice and listening to what's going on with the seasons and cycles in relationship to that. I do really like folk practice and folk witchcraft, and so I do read up on folk witchcraft and integrate some of those things. Most of what I do is just very natural. That's what I want to talk about on this channel, is developing your own natural witchcraft practice, really diving into who you are, what you're hearing, trusting yourself, and creating your own magic from that place. I do a lot of herbal crafting, so maybe that makes me a green witch. I have a farm, maybe that makes me a green witch too. I live on acreage and work with the land. My practice is just very natural. Question number 2, what paradigm, faith, or philosophy informs your craft? Definitely animistic. I would consider myself an animist for sure, in that I really perceive energy in, around, and through all things, myself included. I see that as separate and at times as whole. And I think that's the number one thing that drives my philosophy and my ability to tap into natural magic, is my connectedness to all things. Everything has a spirit to me, and that spirit speaks to me when I listen. And you know what? And I just want to say right there, not all spirits speak to me, because I don't want to interact with them, or maybe they don't want to interact with me. I would also say that I'm a bit of a polytheist. I find that I enjoy tapping into different pantheons and different ideas of gods and goddesses, although I'm not like a hard polytheist. There's such a thing as soft polytheism. Definitely animism though, tapping into the connection, into the spirit that's in all things, and trying to really connect my own spirit with that spirit and see how we interact and what kind of magic wants to come out because of that interaction. Number 3, what culture is your practice rooted in? Oh, a lot of cultures, but sorry, that's my dog. Oh, making a terrible noise on the door because he thinks if he does that, he'll get in, but I'm not going to let him in because then he will just always do that. So I definitely am into Neo-Druidism, and the reason why I say Neo-Druidism is because I think that term encompasses the Druidic revival, which would have occurred in the 1800s. We don't really have a lot written down about what Druidism would have been like. So again, back to that, I can't speak to what we don't have records of. I can speak to where my meditations have brought me and my own interactions. Definitely the Celtic cultures, which were across Europe, have informed my practice and my joy in folk magic and folk practice. But also I do have a bit of a draw towards sort of Norse folklore as well, because my mother's side of the family is primarily Danish. And so I do feel a call to those myths as well. And I married into a Finnish family, so we do have sauna here, and that is a big part of the family culture here. This is such an interesting question because I feel as though nowadays we have so much available to us, and it's really important to honor the cultures that we're called to. I lived with Native American shamans when I was 19 for a year and learned about shamanism and did a bunch of healing there. So I can't say that time on the reservation hasn't informed my practice. The biggest thing that informs my practice is the land around me, is being in the Northwest, is having this connection to the land and the trees and the animals that are predominantly live here. And so I think that's probably the biggest culture that informs my spirituality, as well as just kind of being in this sort of earth first hippie culture that I'm surrounded with about here in the Northwest as well. You may not see that as a spiritual culture, but it definitely is a culture that has its own spirit. Number 4, how long have you been practicing and how did it all start? Again, being a little cryptic, I would say I start every day over again and again and again, pulling the threads of what I have within my day and within myself and within the lifetimes that I'm pulling on. So this is, that's a little bit dodging the question, but I think my practice probably started when I was a child, just my connection to the land and my imagination being the gateway to the spirit realm. I believe that I just had such a connection, especially with the trees in my yard and just the earth around and the call of the spirits in the land that really seemed to be calling my soul. However, I grew up in the Los Angeles area, and my whole life as a kid, all I said was, I can't wait to move away from here where I can move someplace where there's seasons, because there aren't really seasons in Los Angeles. I camped a lot in the summers with my family, and so I got to go all over the United States and see all sorts of natural wonders and connect. But the place that I connected with the most was the Northwest, and that is where I ended up at. In question 6, I'll kind of go into how that's changed and sort of the different paradigms that I've been through. But again, I would say that I start every day in my practice. I really try to have a beginner's mind. The older I get, the more I realize that I just want to be fresh and appreciating what's being offered to me in this moment. I find that is where I really find the magic. And that is where I stay grounded and am able to craft my life and my practice in a way that feels very authentic and achievable for the day. So every day. Number 5, what books or resources did you start with and would you recommend them today? This is such an interesting question because I would say I didn't start off with books. I started off with traveling at age 17 and just making my way and interacting with people and being out in the world. And then I landed on the reservation. And so the first kind of spiritual book that I had was a binder, actually a collection of binders from the medicine woman that I lived with that I just kind of perused and went through. But most of what I learned there was in our interaction. It was in the unspoken things that happened, in the healings that happened because of that time with her. And shamanism is really about gathering the broken pieces of ourselves and bringing them back to our body in order to help us to be embodied here. So those are my first practices. And would I recommend that? Yes, definitely. I don't feel like that is available to everyone, but I do think that you can find good mentors. And I would say where we start is not where we end. So do I have a specific recommendation for a practice? I think the number one practice that I would recommend is meditation, is learning to calm your mind and still your mind, and grounding, learning to get out in nature and to ground yourself and to learn to be present in your body. I think the more that we cultivate those skills, the greater we come into contact with magic and our practice. However, I do happen to have a copy of the first kind of book that I had, and I actually had a tarot deck. I actually had 2 tarot decks before I ever had a book, which is kind of interesting. So that has definitely informed my practice, the Witch's Tarot and the Mother Peace Tarot. But one of the first books I ever bought was this one right here by Oak, Ash, and Thorn. Modern Celtic Shamanism by DJ Conway. And I recently rebought this book because I thought I wanted to look at it again. I feel like the books that came out at this time were well-meaning, but they didn't necessarily have really good information. So I think that if you were very well versed in shamanic practices, and I know that some of you have a problem with that word, so let me just say I don't, because I lived with a shaman. That's the word I learned. But you could use seership if seership feels more comfortable to you. A shaman simply means one who walks between the worlds. So I think every culture has their shamans, and they're called different things. So whatever you feel comfortable with. But I would say, if you feel comfortable with those practices, with journeying, and you have had some good solid training, then reading this book is interesting. It's got some stuff that you just really want to throw out the window. For, again, natural witchcraft, learning to tune into yourself, learning to love yourself enough to trust yourself. I think that is the best practice that you can ever have. And it's messy. Life is messy. You're not going to get it all right. And what you do yesterday, you might not do tomorrow or today. And that's okay. It's okay to evolve and change. And I look back on some of the things I did way back when. When I first got into witchcraft, I feel like basically Wicca was synonymous with witchcraft. And the books that we had out there were all Wiccan. And we didn't have a lot to choose from. You really had to dig and go another way. It was kind of like, there was like the deep ceremonial magic of Crowley, and then there was kind of the Gardnerian tradition that was available to all of us. So yeah, and that would have been like the early 90s, right? And my first books that I had were like the Tibetan Book of the Dead in high school, and some books on mandalas. I had a lot of Eastern philosophy books that were put out by Shambhala. I still think those are great books. So, but I guess the skinny on it is no, I don't have a single book from back then that I can recommend to you. Number 6, how has my paradigm changed over the years? Or has it at all? Oh, hell yeah, it has. Again, starting out with Native American shamanism as my primary focus and being very land focused, very drum focused. That was kind of always what I was into, which in a lot of ways is the right-hand path meeting the left-hand path in very practical ways, like spirit travel for the purpose of uniting the body. So I think that was really where I was at, and I did dabble in ceremonial magic and meet up a couple times at different pagan ceremonies, public ceremonies that were Wiccan. And then I ended up moving up here and going into the Christian church. And that was a really interesting time in my life. And you may think, well, that's not witchcraft, but it definitely was for me. I was definitely the Christian witch. And for me, that was my foray into the right-hand path, for sure. Getting really heady, really getting into service to the divine in order to understand myself. And so I spent quite a bit of time in there and learned a lot about spirit travel and working with spirits and angels to an extent, but also just a lot about traveling, like really traveling deep in the spirit and learning to see over people, learning to see psychically, which they called the prophetic movement in the church. That obviously was not a fit for me. A lot of church members, a lot of church pastors realized I was just not really meant to be in their church. I was frequently invited to find another church. So I spent a lot of time in the Bible and studying the esoteric mysteries and really getting into the Christed consciousness and moving my consciousness into understanding that. And I feel like that was sort of my right-hand path foray. I'm going to do another video on right-hand and left-hand path because I think it's a fascinating concept. And then moving out of there, I definitely moved into energy work. And for me, it was all about energy work. And sorry, I just hit my mic there. I have that stray hair that's tickling me. So then it became about energetic work and seeing the world through energetics, and a lot of meditation and a lot of working with cards, like a lot of divination. And I had worked with divination in my 20s, like I think my 20 to 30 was sort of my divination block. And then it wasn't until probably 38 that I came back to divination. And then it really became about, like I said, energy work. But that, again, became too heady for me. There wasn't enough living in this world and enjoying this world. And so I have gone more and more back into my body, into nature, into the practice of being present and being here, working with cards and divination. I do read cards for a living. You can book a reading with me at tarotandwitchery.com. So I feel like, yes, my practice has changed and it's now way more relaxed, way more about being present, less trying. I'm so sick of trying. If you're really trying really hard all the time, you're going to burn yourself out. There's just very little magic in trying, and there's so much magic in trusting. So I've definitely moved into a place of greater trust and greater understanding of what it means to be comfortable in my own body. And for me, truly wielding that power and practicing and being in my craft is about being present in my body, being grounded, being here, and being connected. Seven, what does your daily practice or regular routine look like? Daily practice, more like weekly practice, I would say. You know, depending on what the season is, I'm going to wake up and do something different. In the warmer months here, I'm going to get out and I'm going to have a glass of water with my feet barefoot on the ground. And right now it's cold, so in the morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to build a fire and I'm going to sit in front of the fire with my water and just reflect. I usually try to take in some kind of poetry every day. I try to get into nature every day. And the biggest thing is that I want to listen. I want to listen to what I'm needing to do. I'm a very creative person. And so, in the summer, that's going to be working in the land, like really working my hands in the land, working with flowers, working with herbs. I'm herb crafting throughout the year, but now that we're moving into winter, it's going to be more about creating herbal products, taking all of those dried herbs and so forth and taking the oils that I've been steeping and creating for months now and turning them into things. So I think I have a very cyclical practice, and I very much live within the wheel of the year. The natural rhythms of life. I try to meditate regularly. I journal. When it comes to regular practices, I think the biggest thing for me is just making sure that I'm present, making sure that I'm getting grounded again, because I am such a doer, a person who can be very outwardly expressed. It's very important for me to constantly be returning to myself, returning to my body, allowing myself to relax into that and honor whatever I'm being called to. So I try to have a little bit of an open lifestyle, so that what my practice needs to be is what I am in the moment and what the earth is doing. Number 8, are there aspects of your practice that are secret, and what's my opinion on secrecy? Yes and no. Is secrecy important? I do have druidic practices that are secret, that are a part of OBOD. So I don't share that with everyone. However, if you want to join OBOD, you will be privy to all of those practices. Secrecy. I do think secrecy is important when it comes to magic. I think that holding our power within and not dispersing it, not sharing it, not talking about it with everyone, but actually holding that power when it comes to a spell or a magical practice can be something that helps to raise the energy, raise the power of that spell so that it's not disseminated or sort of frittered away into the world. We can be so excited to just kind of share in this way, but there's so much power here and we don't want to be releasing the power. I feel like we want to be building the power. On the other hand, if you ask me directly, I will tell you what I do. I'm not hiding anything. I would say I'm an open book, but you're going to have to look. You're going to have to ask. If you have some question about my practice, go ahead and ask. But I do feel like secrecy is important. I think that there are things that should be held not necessarily secret, but sacred. And things that are sacred are not simply thrown out in front of everyone. And so I do feel like that is a part of my practice where the older I get, the more that I realize that holding something as my own in order to keep it sacred and honor it really brings out the beauty in it and allows it to manifest in my life in a way that is much more enjoyable than telling the world. Number 9, what are some of your favorite tools that you use regularly? Walking is a tool for me, for sure. Walking, hiking, being in nature, definitely a tool. Cultivating herbs, that is a tool. I know that seems weird, but cultivating the herbs, harvesting the herbs, preparing the herbs. So I use a lot of herbal remedies and herbal practices. I feel like that is something that's a tool that's very important to me. I like herbal magic. Divination, super into tarot and oracle, pendulum, and divining signs and omens. I feel like that is a regular part of my practice and a regular tool. One of the most important tools for me is my hot tub. My hot tub is the place where I meditate. I get out to once, twice, sometimes 3 times a day, depending. depending. It's the place that I can go sit in the cold and watch the moon, and it's just a wonderful place for me to be, and it's an incredible tool for me. Sauna is a tool for sure, but that is a place that I like to get into and do deep meditative work and get into my body in a very different way, where I'm sort of pressing myself into the heat, allowing it to penetrate and going deeper into my body in a way that I don't do all the time. Yeah, lots of tools, lots of things that I use, but those are the biggies. Those are the ones that I feel are my regular tools in my practice. If you made it this far, go ahead and leave me an emoji down below letting me know how you're feeling right now. Okay, number 10. Number 10 is what resources would I recommend to newbie practitioners. I would recommend nature. Number one, I think nature is one of the best teachers that we have, and we can learn so much by being connected. We have such a deep disconnect, and I feel that this renaissance that we are having with people being drawn to witchcraft is our desire to be connected and a part of the earth. And so I would say get out in nature, look, turn off your phone, put it away, listen and watch and pay attention, and let yourself be drawn to what feels right to you. Like what interests you? Are you interested in the animals? Are you interested in birds? Are you interested in the trees, land masses? Do you like the desert? Do you like the mountains? Do you like the forest? Listen to all these different things and explore them. Explore how they make you feel and what it is that they are saying to you, and listen to that. Really listen to that. I would say let yourself have a beginner's mind, not feel like you have to do it all at once. I think the best resource you have is that beginner's mind, the joy of discovering, the joy of not knowing and finding, I think is an incredible resource. As for actual concrete hold in your hand resources, I definitely have more this Celtic, Welsh, Nordic sort of thing going on. But the books that I really enjoy are books that deal with the seasons and cycles. There are so many resources out there that I feel like are very fluffy, but it's okay to start with fluffy stuff. Again, where you start is not where you end. I think what's important is to keep going and to keep making sure that you're grabbing onto things that feel genuine to you, that make you feel authentic, that make you feel more empowered and connected to what's going on around you, to the people and the land around you. That's that spirit connection. But I mean, I love Christopher Hughes' books. I love them, but they are on Welsh witchcraft. So if you're into Welsh witchcraft, I think he's amazing. What he has out there is lovely. Nigel Pearson has some amazing books out there. Corinne Boyer has great books out there. I feel like there's some wonderful folk witchcraft books out there that are available now. I like Troy books. Like you can go look at Troy books and then find those paperback versions if you don't want to buy the expensive ones. The number one thing is get out and get into the land around you. Get into the land and trust yourself and trust that your natural magic is there. The sparkles are all around. You have only to turn your eyes towards them. And the more you attune yourself to your own magic and your own practice, your own witchcraft, remember you're crafting it yourself. The more you do that, the more confident you're going to get and the more you're going to enjoy your practice. And my hope is that anybody watching this knows that witchcraft is completely accessible to them right now. They don't need to have a bunch of tools or a bunch of things. You just need to be yourself, be honest, reach out and ask. And I know that the universe, the YO universe, always meets us where we're at and takes us on the journey towards the things that we need to become who we really are. All right then, thanks so much, and A blessing to you on your day, a blessing to you in the way that you walk. Let it be from your heart and let yourself trust the magic of who you are.